Truckers are the backbone of our country, but in recent weeks, Canada learned what happens when truckers are not happy. Today's guest is Ashley Wheeler of Cowansville, Quebec, and she's here to talk about the Freedom Convoy. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
I've got to start off by telling the viewers and the listeners that we are related. We didn't know each other until Facebook. We're actually third cousins, but you're on that side of the border. And to be quite honest, I don't know most of you. And so there is something good about Facebook. We actually got to meet. And so I saw you went to Ottawa for the truck convoy. And I said, well, I don't know if she's shy or not, but I had a tendency to believe you weren't. So you agreed to come on.
I did. It was nerve-wracking at first to be asked because, you never know how it's going to be perceived. But I felt like I was asked for a reason and I needed to say yes. So here I am.
Right. So tell me, what interested you in the convoy?
Right. So here in Canada, especially here in Quebec, the mandates related to COVID-19 have been pretty strict. And a lot of us, especially if you are unvaccinated, have felt very suppressed over the last 2 years and that our freedoms have been slowly been taken away. We're being discriminated against. Jobs have been lost. Some of us cannot go into stores like every other person. We have to pay more for our food because we are sort of pushed out of society right now because of these mandates. And a lot of us just said enough is enough. And we saw the convoy and decided that we needed to stand up for our rights and freedoms as well and have a voice.
First of all, I'll say I'm fully vaccinated, but I also understand where you're coming from because I personally think there's some people who have taken this are using this not for the best purposes. And especially now that the pandemic, I think at this point, you know what you're going to do, how to survive the pandemic. I know how I'm going to do it. And I think most Americans are that way. And I suspect most Canadians are. I don't think many minds are going to be changed. And, is that true with Canadians? Do most people know where they stand?
Yeah, for the most part, I think when new information comes out, people are able to take that information and adjust. But this has been a different beast in itself where I don't know, people I felt a little confused as to where they stood and were pushed in one extreme or the other. So there wasn't as much middle ground when it came to this topic.
Right. You know what I find, at least in the United States, I think the struggle is it was so politicized. No matter what political party you belong to, the politicians ran with it. And while you could say we do have the free press in the United States, I say that most reporters have abandoned their true roles years ago. We no longer have an impartial media in this country, for the most part. And I'm not sure if it's Canada the same way in Canada, but we basically have voice pieces for one party or the other. You have Fox News for the Republicans, you have CNN for the Democrats, and then you have all the other networks. But you have very little in the way of true impartial media. Is that true in Canada or not?
Yeah, 100%. And I think this has brought that to light even more, that we've realized that it's really being pushed in a political sense, and they're accepting one view and totally suppressing or demonizing the other side. If you don't have their view and you're not on their political standpoint, then it's been pretty brutal in the news.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I find a lot of those people are the ones quickest to holler tolerance on everything, but only tolerance if you agree with them. And otherwise, so it seems like we have a lot, even though, as I said, I'm fully vaccinated. I wear and because of a health condition my wife has, we take precautions that we have to, but I have never insisted that other people do as I do. And personally, when I go into the stores, I might wear a mask, I might not. And I hear people, at least down here, I hear people say, well, we're being judged if we don't wear a mask, or we're being judged if I go in both ways. I'm not judged. I think most people like me with a mask on. I look better. So the truck convoy, how did this arise? Because it became a phenomenon. And to tell you the truth, it seems like something Americans would do versus Canadians. And I was kind of impressed that because Canadians are more, I don't know, live and let live. And I don't see you protesting that much. So this surprised me. How did it arise?
Right. So, and you're very right. A lot of people were surprised that us Canadians are standing up, and that should mean a lot, right? But this happened out west. I can't tell you exactly in which province, somewhere around Saskatchewan, Alberta, if I'm not, maybe BC. But the western part of Canada really started this movement. And I came in partway through, and I guess there was a lot of planning behind it, and there were people talking, and it came through my news feed. And then people just started to say, hey, we're going to join this. And then people were sharing. And then before you knew it, we had people standing on auto routes all across the country. And then that caught on, and people all across the world started standing up with us saying, you know what, there's something going on here and we need to stand up for it. So I guess it was really word of mouth. It started off with truckers standing up for their rights, and other people said, hey, we need to stand up for our rights as well. And everybody sort of joined forces and united and said, we're standing up together and let's go. We're heading to Ottawa.
Are you finding that this also, because you're not vaccinated, correct?
I am not.
And are you finding there's a lot of vaccinated people who actually support the cause?
100%. Most of the truckers that were in the convoy stated that they were in fact vaccinated, and it's not that they were anti-vax, and I personally am not anti-vax. My children are vaccinated for everything else. I have been vaccinated. It is not a question of an anti-vax convoy. There was something much, much bigger, and that was clear from the get-go that it wasn't vax versus unvax. We're all in this together.
Yeah, because I think some people like to oversimplify it. That's those anti-vax people. And anti-vax is not the appropriate word anyways, because a lot of people who are not getting the COVID vaccine are not anti-vax. They've just chosen not to get this one.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any truckers in your family?
In my extended family, yes. So my parents, cousins, things like that. We do have a couple.
Did they go or take part in any form?
I know a lot of people who, if they were not able to make it all the way to Ottawa, they would actually dress up their vehicles and follow the convoy for a certain distance on the auto route. So everybody that I know that is involved in trucking took part in some way.
I know I was talking to a trucker that I graduated with from high school, and on this side, and he said during this convoy, they've gotten some extra questions as they cross into Canada to make sure. They've had to do a lot more proving of where they are headed, because they didn't want American truckers crossing the border simply to join the cause.
Mm-hmm.
I also understand there's a move to have a convoy on this side.
Yeah, and I believe that's already underway. We've seen a lot of footage of people coming from all over the states since the beginning. So I think there are several convoys that are either going to somewhere in the United States to protest, or some were on the way up towards Canada. We shall see.
Now, I won't, because I am not a Canadian, I will not criticize your government, as you know, because sometimes I read about the Canadians criticizing our government. I won't criticize your prime minister, but I will ask you, how has he handled the situation?
Now, I have never been a political person, but I have to say that since this all started, I am someone who likes to check my facts and not just take a side for taking a side. So I really did take some time to research this and look into it. And I've started listening to political debates for the first time since I was in high school and had to do it. And I'm quite alarmed with how this is being taken care of, and sort of the hidden agenda, quote unquote, that might be behind this. It's very scary for me. And that is why I am here and voicing my opinion, because it scares me for my kids' future, to be very honest.
Now, what did he call it? What act did he bring out? It was an act of.
Correct.
Now, what was it?
It's called the Emergency Act, and it was formerly known as the War Act. But it is an act that has never before been called upon since being called the Emergency Act. And we have had several incidences where railroads were put on fire and cars were being blown up 2 years ago, and this was never called upon. And so that is alarming to see how we're in Ottawa with bouncy castles and kids, and he feels the need to call an emergency act.
Yeah, what was it like in Ottawa when you went? Were you all violent? Were you all violent, burning things? And
well, I sent you some pictures to share. And this is where I'll try not to get emotional. It was one of the most beautiful times that I've ever experienced in my life, and especially in the last 2 years. It was French and English coming together, people from all over. You didn't know people, but you were high-fiving and saying hi, and people yelling, "I love you," and people singing, "Oh, Canada," my kids being handed treats, music, everybody together, just in this beautiful display of love and unity, people meditating in the middle of the ground while people are dancing behind them. It was really jaw-dropping and moving.
Tell me, in your country, does it appear that politicians and the media seems to be spending more time to divide us than to unite us? Because, you know, if I were to watch the news, it's such a lot of times the news is so foreign to me, because wherever I go in this country, I find wonderful people who are not divided by our differences. A lot of times we're united by our differences, but that doesn't, you know, that doesn't make the news. So I often find that the media, in conjunction with politicians, are just trying to divide us on, you know, whether it be this issue or any other issue. And this comes from a person who's made a living. Well, I started out my living in the newspaper world, and then I've been in the quasi-media world for most of my work in life, and I have watched the media change so much to where I don't even recognize it.
Yeah, so I really think what you're saying is true. They really are. Media is not the same as before, where the anchor would sit there and read something from both sides and let the viewer decide. I think it really is political or pushes the views of some. Some of that is because of where the funding is coming from. Some of that, I think, is just social pressures. But yeah, I think it really wasn't on my radar before. Like, we knew that they gave half truths, but since the pandemic, it has become very, very clear that, you know, we have been told that we're a danger to society, we're terrorists. Like, it has been the one portion of the community has really been stigmatized and told, you know, I think some of the words of our prime minister was, we should not tolerate these people. And he kind of just put us all in this one little bag of unvaxxed terrorist white supremacists. And that is what is being pushed on the media. And that's something else to be alarming and to be alarmed with, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I see that all the time down here with a variety of topics, and they actually pretend that they're unbiased. Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny to watch. Now, Tommy, what about your friends and family who are vaccinated? Do they hold it against you in your decision not to be vaccinated?
Right. So some of them are very loving and understanding, just like we are to them, that it's personal choice. But I have to say that I do have a lot of family, a lot of friends and coworkers who no longer speak to me, will not look at me when I go by, that I've got nasty messages from. We were called, being yelled at times, saying, you know, you're not okay by not getting vaccinated. So it is very real. There's going to be a lot of healing to be done after this, let's just say.
Really, it's like that, yeah. Because I would never judge anybody, and I've never been judged one way or the other. I would say in my sphere of down here, I would say more people are vaccinated, but I certainly wouldn't go up to somebody and ask. The only time I've ever had somebody, I wouldn't say it's a negative experience, it's almost a humorous experience. I happened to not be wearing my mask in the early days of the pandemic, and I went into the post office, and I had a former teacher come up to me, and she came right up about 2 feet away and said to me, "Scott, you're bothering me. I could get infected by you." And I kind of chuckled to myself, but she just walked up 2 feet from me. And was she really bothered, or was she just trying to, you know, I just kind of chuckled about it. But I don't think anybody in my family or my friends have ever judged me one way or the other, and vice versa. But that's too bad that you've run into that.
Yeah, and even, I mean, here we do not have a choice but to wear a mask. You cannot go into a store. I cannot teach without my mask. We're not allowed in restaurants. So it's been pretty intense. I decided to take a stand and try to go into a store without a mask. And I've had friends do that as well. And they were with their children. And there's videos of this where the store owner runs after them and is yelling at the top of their lungs, "Get out, get out." And the poor kids are crying because people are yelling, like, "Get out of the store." It's totally different here compared to in the States. Like, there is no leeway. It's you wear your mask or step out of society.
But isn't Quebec a little more like that? Like, even their language laws, they take very seriously. Like you're actually making me feel a little bit better about Vermont, because although there's a lot of passion involved in the whole COVID pandemic, I think for the most part, other than vocal minorities on both ends, I think most people are keeping their heads about it. Do you plan to continue with this truck convoy, or has it been broken up?
So that's a tough question, because we have now been threatened that if we, if we show up with our children in that area, they're threatening to take people's kids away. People's bank accounts are being seized. So even when we were doing a legal protest, if we donated any money to help a trucker who is out of a job right now, we could have all of our funds seized. Just flying a Canadian flag on my car right now, I could be pulled over and questioned or given fines without really any reason why. So it's touchy, and just showing up with these things on my car or on my Facebook page has left me open to some scrutiny, a lot of scrutiny at my place of work. So although, yes, I do intend to continue to help in every way possible, I think we have to play it day by day and also think of the safety of our families. So we'll see.
Has your opinion of your government changed at all from watching this take place?
Yeah, it has opened up my eyes to stuff that I did not really know that was going on. A couple of years ago, a couple of people tried to sort of talk to me about what was going on. And I thought, they were far right and there was maybe some craziness behind it. But I've done my own research, and it is alarming to me to see that our government has taken place or has had training through the World Economic Forum, that there is talk of them doing a reset, that there is this plan set in place to basically put everybody under digital identities and control things. And I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because I would like people to be able to look at the information and form their own opinion. But by doing my own research and seeing that our government on global news, on one of the, the mainstream media, has come out and admitted that he's a part of this for years now, that is very concerning for me and has definitely opened up my eyes to what is going in our politics.
I know you're younger than I am, so maybe you had, and I don't know if it's even something that most high school kids read now, but back when I was in high school in the early 80s, we read the book 1984 by George Orwell. And if you read it, it wasn't meant to be true, but it just had the world in the future, and it was amazing how much he actually nailed what is going on. And I think that's true whether you're left, right, or in the middle. You can't help but see that George Orwell nailed some things that's happening now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of books. I've had people come to me left and right with different books that they've read over the years, and we're like, Ashley, look at this, read this. And there's actually a book written on this reset. So there's definitely plenty of material out there to tickle your brain with.
I know the one thing I've heard from even Canadian friends who are not as sympathetic to the cause is it may have been a good cause, but it was taken over by radical anti-government people. Are you anti-government?
I definitely am not. As I mentioned, I was never into politics. But for me, it kind of just ran in the background. We showed up to vote every year, but I never swayed one way or the other. Like I mentioned, I now have some great concerns, but I did not walk into this as a let's get our government out of this. I walked into this as a let's get our rights and freedoms back, because we can't live like this anymore.
You probably ran into some of those people, because I can't believe that those people aren't involved to some degree.
So in the media right now, there's a lot of talk about the organizers being those white supremacists and all the other words that they call them. And even if that is something of their past, like I've told someone recently, they have not stood up on a stage there and expressed any of those views. For me, that if that is in their past, that could very be, I'm not denying it, but what I'm seeing them stand up on the stage and say has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, let's stand together, let's unite, let's love. So yeah.
So tell me, Ashley, are you able to come into the United States now, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated? I can't keep up with the rules.
Neither can we. I would have to check the date, but at the moment, I do not think that we are allowed to go anywhere. I know that it is supposed to be opening up for here in Quebec very soon, but I think it's only after March break.
Right. I know we have some mutual relatives from Quebec who winter in Florida. Did COVID change their lives at all? Were they able to go?
So some of them chose to, however, they needed to have a vaccination to do that. So some of them got vaccinated just to be able to travel, and others did not feel comfortable and they ended up staying home. And as a result, I think mental health has suffered because of that, because they haven't been able to get out to the sun. They're stuck here in the snow with the rest of us.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's a different topic as a whole, because I who work with older people recording their stories, the whole pandemic, I feel a lot of the older people have been actually left just out there, because if I've watched people just go downhill physically and mentally just because the media and the politician have created so much fear that they're afraid to leave their houses. And when you get older, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I feel that they've really been left out there. And is there a fear factor in Canada in speaking up and sharing your opinions, or anybody like you? Is there any retribution?
Yeah, there's definitely the fear of being ostracized, of being looked at as, we've been called names of like, we're part of the conspiracy theory and we've lost our minds. So there's definitely that fear of being looked at differently and being treated differently. And now with these emergency acts, being incriminated for speaking our freedoms, which are in our Charter of Rights. And I would like to add, actually, the last living signer of the Charter of Rights has actually stood up and said that all of these mandates are in fact against our human rights. And it is very, very clear that they can't be doing any of this, the mandatory masks, the mandatory anything, and yet it's still happening and nobody's stopping it. So that is another really important point to keep in mind of how is it happening?
So one last question is, what would change your mind? Was there anything that would change your mind about getting the vaccine?
Unfortunately, with all the research that I have seen, with the increased number of doctors and scientists and epidemiologists standing up and saying that they no longer think this is a good thing, that a lot of them do not suggest getting it. There is no way that I would take this vaccine at all.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on. It was great to actually talk to you almost face to face via Zoom. The wonders of technology. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.